Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Wally Rowder. I'm your host for BizTalk 47. Good evening and welcome to Business Continuity Management. I'm coming to you live from the city of Singapore. Tonight, we're going to be talking about what is business continuity management and how important is business continuity management to the survival of a business or a corporation as such. Does anybody here know what business continuity management is? Do any of us here know what it is? Could you wave your hand? Have you ever heard of BCM? Nazgul, have you heard of BCM? Yes or no? Wave your hand. Okay, good, excellent. Okay, good, excellent. Does everybody else know what BCM is? Angelito, do you know what BCM is? Are you there, Angelito Velasco? He's busy. Okay. All right. Anybody else here want to comment? Wendy, do you know what BCM is, Wendy? Are you there, Wendy? Open your microphone, Wendy. Good evening. Can you unmute your microphone? Hello, Wendy. Good evening, everybody. Hello, Ramanath. Hello, Emily. Hello, Spencer. Thank you all for waving your hands. Great, excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you. Edmul Jane Modiva. Hi, Edmul. Do you want to open your microphone and talk to me? Are you there, Edmul? Hi, Edmul.
Hi, sir. Hi, sir.
Hi. Do you know what business continuity? Do you know what business continuity management is?
Yeah, talking about business, right?
Business continuity management. What is it? Do you know?
For now, I'm just trying to search it online. Yeah.
Well, you don't need to search it. I'll explain it. All right. I'll talk to you shortly. Thank you so much, man. You're welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You can mute your microphone for me, please. Mute your microphone. Thank you. Okay, guys, let's talk about it. What is business continuity management? You all know that recently the world has suffered COVID-19. Everybody know about COVID-19? Wave your hands for me, please. Does everybody know about COVID-19? Come on, wake up, everyone. Wave your hands. Everyone. All 160 people, wave your hands. Yep, Junhan, do you know what COVID-19 is? Wave your hand, yep. Good, excellent, mate. Excellent, excellent. So COVID-19 hit the world with no notice. It didn't make an appointment. Whoever started COVID-19, whichever country in the world planted it on Earth, no one knew it was coming. Unfortunately, 75% of businesses around the world were not prepared for COVID-19. They had no business continuity plan in place. What do I mean by business continuity plan? It's a plan that is in place in order to be able to continue business and still be profitable in the face of any disaster. It is the ability to continue business without disruption in the event of a disaster. And what sorts of disasters? Well, you have the perfect example, COVID-19. Ladies and gentlemen, it is predicted internationally that by the end of December this year, we will see at least 200,000 to 300,000 businesses go bankrupt or wind up. Now, whether that happens or only a percentage of them end up winding up, the prediction is from economic agencies and from economic commentators all around the world that if we look at the global picture or the global footprint of businesses around the world and the financial suffering that they went through and the loans and the debt that businesses have accumulated, it is estimated that we will see somewhere between 100,000 and 300,000 businesses either close their doors or go into some sort of debt protection, insolvency or bankruptcy by December of this year. For us as employees, it doesn't mean much because if you're employed by someone, the business has to keep paying your salary. But what pressure is it putting on the business? And why is business continuity management important? Let me share with you what are the principles of business continuity management. I want you first to think of an example of an airline. If an airline has no passengers and its aircraft are grounded, every day that that aircraft is grounded and that the engine is switched off costs the airline money. Most airlines buy their aircraft through leasing or through bank debt, through borrowing of money. Aircrafts are not cheap. You can spend anywhere from $300 to $400 million per aircraft. Now, for some airlines who bought 30, 40 aircraft in the last 3 or 4 years and are still paying off the debt, having no passengers and having that machine grounded is incurring more debt. Because once you switch off an aircraft's engine, before you can switch it on again when it goes cold, that aircraft has to go through certain mechanical and airworthiness checks before it can go back up in the air. Otherwise, the airline risks the lives of all the passengers it carries. So I want you to think, what is the impact of an airline without business continuity management? What is the impact on hospitals without plans to handle disasters like COVID-19? What is the impact on funeral directors or people who arrange funerals when the world has to bury millions of people in open graves, thank you to the disease COVID-19, as has happened in some countries? Where is the impact? What is the business continuity plan that funeral directors had in place to be able to cope with business? For some businesses, a business continuity plan could be to prevent financial loss or debt. For other businesses, it could be to cope with the increase in sales. Can I ask you, Nazgul, did COVID-19 bring an increase to Amazon and online shops, or did it bring a decrease? Can you tell us, Nazgul? Can you unmute your microphone tonight? Hello, Nazgul. Hi, good evening.
Hello, sir. Hi,
welcome,
how are you?
Welcome to BCM. Tell me, what impact do you think, or what plans did Amazon have to have in place? Was it because of their fear to lose money, or was it plans that they had to have in place to counter the amount of business they got as a result of COVID-19?
Oh, sir. Okay, I will try. I think they had a good plan. Maybe they had some analysis and good plan to prevent problems.
Well, actually, well, you're right. They had a plan to expand their operations worldwide. But the only thing that COVID-19 did to them, it made them actually accelerate that plan, because they went from like a million orders to something like 30 million orders a year. COVID-19 put Amazon under extreme pressure. And you are right, Nazgul, because they had already planned to expand. But what it did to them, it actually accelerated their expansion. Do you see where I'm coming from? Are you with me, Nazgul?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
All right. So do you understand what I mean by impact? Even though that Amazon had already planned to expand its operation, when COVID-19 struck, the expansion had to happen a lot quicker. And can you tell me, do you think the expansion would have cost them less or more during COVID-19? Do you think that would have had any impact on them?
Yes, sir. I think, of course, this company, how I explain, of course, it's negative impact for his.
Very good. Good. Nazgul, don't be afraid to say, that's why I'm here. I want you to have confidence. If you don't know, just say, I don't know, and I'll explain. But the reason I'm asking you is so that you learn and boost your confidence. Do you understand where I'm coming from, ma'am?
Yes, sure.
Thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon. Nurilla, do you know what BCM is, Nurilla? Are you there, Nurilla? Good evening, Nurilla. Where are you from? You're looking very bright and smiley tonight. How are you tonight?
Yeah.
Good? Okay,
Yeah,
Nurilla.
I'm
Okay, tell me what you understand by business continuity management.
I think it's very important for doing business, for continuing business. Even it's you have just told us about COVID-19. Even it's so long break. I mean that's so problems to continue business. So the business gives benefits, good benefits, and we have to try in any difficulties. We have to try to continue business, and we
Absolutely.
have to help how to manage it, and how to make a plan in this difficult situation.
Thank
in
you very
order
much.
to encounter it. Yes, in
Yes.
order to encounter in this situation.
Thank
So,
you.
really
Good
important.
answer.
Yeah.
Good answer. Let me just add to that. Thank you so much. Businesses, the world were not ready for it, because what happened to businesses during COVID-19, like any other disaster, this wasn't going to be short term. Governments stopped people from leaving their homes. In China, factories closed down. In India, IT companies told all their staff to work from home. Thousands of people that work for Amazon, thousands of people that work for Apple, thousands of customer service and technical support people suddenly went from working in the office at their desktop to working at home. Now, when that happened, companies had to then fork out a lot of money to buy enough laptops for all their staff to work from home. And what happened to the sales of laptops as a result of COVID-19? As more companies needed more equipment, then the people who sell laptops, the laptop manufacturers like Lenovo and all the other companies, did not expect it to happen. So even though their factories had to close and they weren't allowed to open, the only stock they had available was what was in their warehouses around the world. So COVID-19, even though it may have been a profitable time for some businesses, it did put certain strains on all businesses. So what I want to do now is talk about what is BCM and how do companies have to plan for the future. Analysts say that 99.9% of companies globally had an inadequate business continuity plan in place for COVID-19. There is a very few companies that would say out today, we were ready for COVID-19. None of them were. And if they were to say they were ready, they would be lying, because no one expected COVID-19 to lock down the globe like it did. Airline travel stopped. People could not leave their homes. Recently, in the last 2 months, Shanghai was under lockdown yet again. In Singapore, for 90 days, people had to work from home. I'm sure in your country, you suffered the same thing. So we've never suffered anything like COVID-19. So any company that says to you they actually had planned for it, I dare you to say to them, please prove it. How could you have planned for a disaster when we've never had a disaster equal to COVID-19? No company in the world were ready for COVID-19. So let's talk about what is business continuity management in reality. Let's go back to my PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so what is it? Let's talk about it. Business continuity management is all about having a business continuity plan. What is business continuity management? Business continuity management is the process by where you have a document that outlines how you're going to deal with a disaster. And I'll talk about those shortly. Can everybody here see my slide? Could you wave to me? Ki, can you see my slide? Yes? Okay, great. Min, can you see my slide? Can you wave your hand to me? Great, excellent. All right, can everybody see my slide? Great, excellent. So business continuity plan is best described as a document or a set of documents that outline the needed procedures and the needed processes that the organization will actually have put in place in order to carry on with their essential business of earning revenue and operating during and after a disaster. Remember, no business can know in advance when a disaster is coming, but they have to have a plan in place to deal with such a disaster when it does come. So, as part of what we call in the academic world business continuity management, a business continuity plan will provide organizations with a strategic way to deal with the issues and ensure their business survival and financial survival. It is really imperative that whether you're running a multinational company or even your own business, that you have BCP in place. Why? It's because any business has a revenue to support. Any business has to pay salaries of the people that work for it. Even if you're self-employed, you still need to make an income. And if that income stops as a result of the disaster and you don't have any other income, then the reality is you cannot service the business debts and expenses you have to pay. And by the time the disaster is over, you may not have a business left. So the key focus is ongoing operations and making sure that you can get the business back to normal almost immediately after the disaster ends. It all comes back to speed. It comes back to what we call planning. So you have to have two basic plans in place. You have to have a business continuity plan in place. And the second part of that plan has to be the disaster recovery plan. And the disaster recovery plan is basically a process or a set of procedures on how you're going to restore the business infrastructure should the business come to a complete stop, as it just did through COVID-19. Kiki, I hope you're listening to me. Okay, so basically a disaster recovery plan is the end of or result of restoring the business. For example, businesses that collapsed, factories that had to close their doors during COVID-19 because no one was allowed to go to work in the factories. If they didn't have a disaster recovery plan on how they're going to get operations back to normal as quickly as possible, they would be bankrupt by now. And many factories in China are still facing the consequences because by the time they were able to reopen, a lot of their staff had left the city where the factory is, gone back to their hometown, and were not able to come back due to travel restrictions and the Chinese government closing off certain cities. So when we talk about disaster recovery plans, business continuity plans, excuse me, we always need to keep in mind how vulnerable is our business? Where is our business located? And what will happen if the area we're in is locked down, or if other cities where we rely on people to come to work from, or where we buy our raw materials from, are locked down. All of these are part of vulnerability assessment. What does vulnerability assessment mean? It means an assessment of the dangers and the impact. How vulnerable are you to suffer? What is it? What is it? How dangerous will the result be? How vulnerable is the business? Why do we need business continuity planning? Why do we need business continuity management? Very simple. Number one, please take a picture of these PowerPoints because there will be no PowerPoint presentation shared. So please, if need be, please take pictures as I go through with your mobile phone. Otherwise, you'll be able to watch the video again on YouTube at the Apex Stories channel. Okay, so what is the purpose of BCM? Business continuity management is required in order for any company to be able to respond to a disaster in a timely and efficient manner. It enables the company to have a plan to undertake and rescue its operations. It provides the company a roadmap on how to minimize its losses. It is there to facilitate a fully integrated, a fully comprehensive, detailed, understandable, multi-department, multidisciplinary plan on how to deal with an external disaster. That means you don't only worry about the factory, you worry about your IT department if computers crash, if viruses hit. You worry about your suppliers if the supply chain is destroyed. You worry about your distribution chain. If your biggest customers are in certain parts of the world and you're no longer able to supply them, what will the impact be? What will the bottom line loss? How vulnerable are you? And the other major concern or reason is, ladies and gentlemen, to ensure the safety and security of all the staff that you employ and the people that you do business with. So what we've come to say is, why do we need business continuity planning? Why do we need business continuity management? Okay, so who here can tell me what they understand about what I've just explained? Mustafa Jihar Yassin, could you open your microphone, please, sir? Hello, Mustafa. Hi,
Yes.
Mustafa. Hi, good evening,
Yeah.
sir. Do
Hi.
you
Good
understand? Good afternoon. Do you understand what I mean by business continuity planning?
Yes, yes, I did.
All right, can you explain to me how important is business continuity for the company you work for or your business? What impact does it have on your business? Can you explain?
Yes, it has a negative impact, and the profit will be down, and the transaction, everything will be not good. So to sustainable the business, you ought to plan ahead of time for those
Absolutely.
difficulties and problems and puzzles.
Can I ask you, do you think your business was ready for COVID-19 or did it come as a shock?
No, as a shock, nobody was ready for this.
Thank you very
This
much.
is a sudden happening, you know.
Absolutely.
everyone.
No business in the world had enough plans in place to deal with COVID-19. And you are right. Thank you so much for your contribution. I'll talk to you again shortly. Thank you.
You are
So,
welcome.
thank you. Okay, let me talk to somebody else. Lydia Larica. Hi, Lydia. Do you understand what I mean by business continuity management, Lydia?
Yeah, so this is to ensure the how do you call this?
It's to ensure the ongoing operation and the
Yeah.
financial sustainability of the business. Yes. Are you there?
Yes.
Okay. Do you understand what I mean by that, Lydia?
Yes.
Okay. Can you give me an example of how your company that you work for or your business could have better prepared for the disaster?
Yeah. For example, I'm working in an airlines.
Yes.
And airlines says, we know that all airlines now have problem because of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes.
And so for the airlines to run, I can the management will acknowledge or accept some parcel, some kind of freight.
So they basically they go from passenger to cargo operation. Is that right? To cover their loss.
Yes, to cover up some kind of some loss of
absolutely
the income,
fantastic. Yeah, absolutely great. And in actual fact, that happened. Airlines like Singapore Airlines, Lufthansa, and all the big airlines in the world actually had themselves put boxes on seats on airplanes. So because people like Amazon, Alibaba, and all the big online stores around the world suddenly had to actually ship hundreds of thousands of packages. Airlines decided that instead of carrying passengers, they would fill aircraft seats with boxes and packages and parcels instead of flying the actual aircraft back. In actual fact, some airlines took all the seats out and used the cabin for cargo. And they were able to get enough money to actually help to cover the bill of keeping aircrafts on the ground. But you are right. That's a very good example. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. Let's move on. I'll talk to you again shortly. So let's go on and talk about more about what is business continuity. Okay. What are the benefits of business continuity management? I guess that's the most important question we're all asking ourselves. What are the benefits? We know the purpose. We just spoke about the purpose. All right. Now let's talk about the benefits. The benefits are to make the company more reliant and more self-resilient to potential threats. We teach our kids how to defend themselves when they go to school. We teach our kids how to if they're hungry, when they're 6 or 7 years old, how to open the fridge and help themselves. We teach our kids how to walk. We teach our kids how to eat, how to use chopsticks. And BCM teaches companies how to deal with disaster. BCM helps companies identify crisis, and it helps them identify the events during that crisis and impacts. No company was prepared for COVID-19. No company had a plan to make hundreds of thousands of employees work from home. No company had an IT infrastructure with thousands of laptops in order to facilitate thousands of Facebook, Google, and other company employees working from home. No company was prepared for how employees had to work from home and how companies could monitor the performance of those employees during the crisis. No company knew on how they would tackle having to reopen after COVID-19. Factories all over the world closed. Raw materials had passed use by date. Raw materials were not available from some suppliers. Some companies did not have an alternative plan or alternative supplier in place. As a result, they could not even resume production because they didn't have the raw materials and they did not have an alternate plan in place. For a lot of companies, especially smaller companies, they did not have any form of crisis communication. They did not know about using Zoom as an online work platform where people could log in every day and work from home. They did not have an online office or an online environment. They didn't use it. They've never needed it. All they used to use was email and probably WhatsApp or chat. But did they ever have an online environment where people could log in into breakout rooms and work online, and where the boss could see everybody at work sitting in front of their computers every day? Absolutely not. Who benefited? At the end of the day, Zoom sold more memberships around the world than ever. It sold millions. Zoom made money, but Zoom already had suffered because the majority of its technical staff and support staff had to work from home. And that's not just hundreds, that's thousands of them all over the world because they weren't allowed to go back and work from the office. So even though Zoom was making money, it was also bleeding because of the costs it had to incur to set up all its thousands of customer support specialists and provide them the equipment to work from home. Companies like Facebook, Google, Zoom actually paid employees somewhere between $500 and $800 US each to go and buy a desk and an office chair and set up their own office from home because they didn't know how long it would take before employees could come back to a real office. And for most, it took nearly 2 years. They need to ensure the availability of resource that will enable design and implementation of the effective business continuity and disaster recovery activities of that company or institution. So you need to know that after a disaster, after COVID-19, if any of your staff were to go back to their own town and couldn't come back to work, do you have other people? Do you have other talent in order to cover for them? Have you left yourself without enough talent? Have you got enough people trained or cross-trained to be able to cover in the event that you lose some of your human capital? All right, what sort of disasters could cause or give reason for implementation of business continuity? Any unplanned event, okay? Any unplanned event that requires immediate redeployment of limited resources, man-made disasters, earthquakes, biodisasters, biochemical, hurricanes, tornadoes, fires, bombings, and earthquakes. Whether we want to call it a biohazard or not, COVID-19 was a health hazard. It was a medical hazard. And it could have been a biologically man-made disease if we could ever prove it. No one knows. No one wants to take accountability for it. But regardless, the world today and many parts of the world, companies still operate in countries where earthquakes are a part of their daily life. They risk an earthquake on a daily basis because of their geographical location. And a lot of companies still have not learned on how to deal with disaster. This is an ongoing problem for companies around the world. The other element is things like anthrax disease, disruptive events such as terrorist attacks. All of these things can cause a reason for you to have to implement business continuity management. Anthrax is a disease, just like COVID-19, but anthrax is probably 10 times more fatal. But thank God we haven't had a major spread of anthrax for some time. Look at what COVID has done. And maybe now COVID has overtaken anthrax. Companies were not ready for any of this. And some people say that it was less likely for a volcano to happen and cause so much disaster than for ever to expect COVID-19. COVID-19 was totally unexpected and unplanned. All right, so does everybody know what I mean by natural disaster? Everybody here knows what an earthquake is? Yes or no? Good, excellent. Go New Trung. Do you understand what I mean by a disaster? Go. Okay, thank you, Go. Okay. All right. Sylvia, do you understand what I mean by a natural disaster? Sylvia, can you wave your hand for me, Sylvia? Thank you so much. Okay, who have I got here? Mustafa, do you understand what I mean by a natural disaster and business continuity management? Can you wave your hand for me, Mustafa? Thank you, sir. Enjoy your dinner, Mustafa. Hi, Dexter. Do you understand what I mean by business continuity management? Dexter, can you unmute your microphone for me? Are you there, Dexter? Unmute your microphone, Dexter. Would you like to talk to me? I can't hear you, Dexter. You have to unmute your microphone. Hi,
Hello,
Dexter. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. How about you?
Good, thank you. Dexter, do you understand what I mean by business continuity management and disaster or conditions that can cause the need for BCM?
Yes.
All right, give me an example of what you think the impact of COVID was on a company that you work for or a company that you know? Can you give me an example?
It can cause the closure because of the financial stability of the company will collapse if there is no profit. At the same time, if it is a simple business or a business itself, if there is no customers, so it will affect the profit
All right, can I
of the
ask
company.
you, what do you think, what were the impacts on hospitals in the Philippines when people started rushing by the thousands for treatment for COVID-19? Do you think the hospitals were ready for that? And if so, what sort of impact do you think they had on hospitals?
So the hospital accommodation will collapse. There is a certain numbers for that, but if it is in a rush or in an immediate or quick accommodation of the hospitals, so it will have a domino effect on the health system of the Philippines.
Absolutely, and it did. Actually, it did. People
Yes, yes, yes.
were queuing, and it's not only on the Philippines. Look at other countries like the US, Indonesia, the UK, and Europe. They were turning patients away. They had no room to put them. It got to a stage where they were putting people on trolleys outside. They had no room. Not only did it do that, but doctors and nurses were getting infected and they were running out of medical resources to treat patients. Why? Because the hospital had never thought that it would need so many protective outfits for all its nurses and doctors. Some hospitals did not have enough masks. Some hospitals did not have enough protection or what they call, infectious disease uniforms for their staff to wear. Some hospitals had nurses working with just a mask, treating people with infectious diseases because hospitals had not planned for COVID-19. Does everybody understand the impact that a disaster can bring on a business now? Can you all wave your hands? Yeah. Let's talk about what is the impact of a disaster or an earthquake on a small city. Let's take cities in the US or any part of the world where there's earthquakes. What do you think the impact is on the economy? If there is an earthquake and homes are destroyed, people are killed. That means people in that community are killed. It means that their jobs are left without anyone to fill their jobs. Families are left without mothers and fathers, or children die. The economy in that village or that town will suffer because of the cost of repair after the volcano or after the earthquake. So every community, not only the people living next to it, but the whole community suffers. So do you all agree that not only individuals or companies have to have a business continuity plan, also cities, countries need to have a business continuity plan? Do you understand that? Yes or no? So governments now, governments in the Philippines, Indonesia, and countries all over the world have had to say, we need to have a business continuity plan on how we're going to deal with such viruses like COVID to stop our population from dying, because countries weren't ready for it. They were ill prepared. Does everybody understand that? Yes or no? Most countries have soldiers to fight wars, but unfortunately, COVID-19 did not require soldiers with guns. It was a different type of war. Does everybody understand where I'm coming from? So businesses fight the same war during a disaster. Businesses need to have a plan, and the soldiers in the business are just the same as the soldiers that defend their country. Because without the right employees trained on what to do when a disaster hits, the business will fail. The business will collapse. Do you all understand what I'm saying? Can you wave your hands, please? Everybody wave their hands. Come on. Okay, good. Okay. All right. Let's look at the common failures as a result of some of the disasters. Remember, we talked about disasters. We talked about unplanned events, earthquakes, biohazards, biochemical hazards, hurricanes, tornadoes, fires, bombings, anthrax. Let's look at some of the failure areas that suffer immediately. If there's an earthquake or a volcano, power outage. If you're in a city and the power goes off, automatically you have computer hardware problems. You have software problems because software can't run, computers are shut down. And when computers shut down unexpectedly, if you do not have a backup power, then all your systems fail. Business, if it relies on computer systems, cannot function. Can you imagine what would happen to a hospital without its computer system? Can you imagine what would happen to a hospital without power if they did not have electricity backup generators? Computer hardware failures, they happen as a result of software problems or power outages. Human error. When people are stressed because of disaster, they make errors. Telecommunication failures, no phones, no internet, unable to communicate with your staff who are stuck at home. All of these have an impact. Okay, they all have an impact, and they are all common failure areas as a result of whether it's an earthquake, volcano, a tragedy, or a disease like COVID-19. They are issues that play a significant role. 80% of companies around the world, 80%, let's talk about it, not even 80, 70% of companies around the world, okay, or 70% of companies in the US only experienced significant interruptions recently as a result of power outages, 50% as a result of software problems because of power outages and shutdown of facilities and problems due to the actual pressure, you call it traffic, demand for IT services. All right, we look at floods. In the US alone, every year when there's a flood, more than 45% of companies experience failures. Computer hardware, again, more than 40% have experienced hardware problems as a result of disasters. Human error, when people are under pressure and don't come to work and work from home or are stressed over what's happening, again, it causes room for error. All of these impact businesses, and that's why businesses need a business continuity plan. Think of this, a simple thing like a lightning storm, okay? Heavy rain, thunder, lightning storm. It can disconnect power. It can disconnect phone lines. All of these have a ripple effect, okay? So if there's a power outage, you probably have a telecommunication failure because there's no power. You can't use the internet. So all of these things have a ripple effect. All right, let's talk about what do I mean by a ripple effect. Can anyone tell me what is a ripple effect? What do I mean by that? Does anyone know what a ripple effect is? Let's give an example. Okay, let me give you an example. For example, if the airline has no passengers to carry, the ripple effect is all the airline crew will have no job. Flight attendants will be retrenched. Why? Because there's no passengers to carry. Captains and pilots may still work because they could fly cargo instead of passenger. Okay, but however, what happens when there's not enough cargo to fill the fleet of the whole airline? Of course, their income is going to be impacted. With the shortage of ships being able to load cargo at ports, with the shortage in the number of people able to load cargo and work during the COVID-19 lockdown, aircraft could not operate because no one was allowed to work and load them. All of these things have a major contribution or impact on the business. And if airlines cannot carry cargo and deliver it overnight by air freight, of course there's a ripple effect, because the food supplies or the medicines that airlines carry by cargo, the equipment that companies need to transport from one country to another by urgent airline cargo, they need it urgently. All of that came to a stop. Companies could no longer rely on airline cargo. They had to rely on sea cargo, but also ships all over the world stopped because there was no one to load containers on ships, and ports got affected by the ripple effect of COVID-19 because people in some countries could not even go to work at the port of the virus. Everybody had to stay home. So COVID does not only have an effect on airlines, it has an effect on cargo ships and transport of goods. It also has an effect on raw materials being taken from the raw material supplier to the processing plant or to the end consumer, because if they don't get raw materials, they can't manufacture, they can't produce the goods or services, and therefore it will create a shortage for the end consumer. So what I'm saying is, whatever the continuity management failure that a company has, there will be an effect, a ripple effect on the industry and the consumer. Correct? Does everybody understand that? During COVID-19, airlines had to fly vaccines all over the world. However, vaccine needed to be transported in containers which are refrigerated, because as you know, the vaccine had to be kept at a certain temperature. A lot of airlines did not have enough refrigerated containers to transport the vaccine. And the airlines that have the capacity could not go to the countries that were needed because of COVID-19 restrictions. So no matter what the cause, no matter which business you're in, if you do not have BCM in place and your business suffers, there will be a ripple effect. Does everybody understand what I mean by that? Yes or no? All right, let's talk about Amazon. Why do you think Amazon suffered? Amazon is an online shopping experience. So when people place an order with Amazon, if the supplier cannot get the goods to Amazon's warehouse, and if the supplier cannot even ship the goods out of his own factory to Amazon, Amazon cannot fulfill the order to its consumer. And these were common problems that Amazon and other businesses had to deal with during COVID-19. What that meant for them is if they thought that the supplier was going to be impacted, they bought large quantities and stored them at an Amazon warehouse. But that also had a cost on Amazon because they needed more space. The cost of cargo went up as a ripple effect because of COVID-19 closing down airports, limiting the number of ships that could load cargo. All of this had a ripple effect. So Amazon could no longer deliver goods at the rate it used to, but Amazon was still very, very successful. It did the majority of business online throughout COVID-19. It actually processed more sales than any other online consumer. Look at Alibaba. Alibaba exceeded and broke all its records, but sadly, Amazon still did better because Amazon is probably got a better reputation worldwide and they have more customers worldwide. Let's go back to our PowerPoint presentation. All right, so the different types of plans. Business continuity is the major plan. Part of business continuity, you must have disaster recovery. You must have a continuity of operations plan. You must have an emergency operations plan. You must have a crisis management committee and plan in place, which is part of your business continuity management plan or business continuity plan. And you must have an incidents response plan. All right, so let's talk about these, the 4 R's of contingency planning. 1 is to respond. 2 is to resume. 3 is to restore. And 4 is to recover. Let's go back. Let's start the other way. After a disaster, you must first be able to restore back to pre, or at the same time respond to the current situation. Once you've responded, you need to go back to the same level of business that you used to do beforehand, and then slowly you will recover to take you back to where you were before the disaster. So please write these down: BC, DR, COOP, CM, and IR. They go in this order: business continuity, disaster recovery, continuity of operation plans, emergency operation plans, crisis management processes, and incident response processes. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, remember we said business continuity has to happen, and sometimes it never ends. Let's look at it. The objective of business continuity plan. In the event of disaster recovery, you need to make sure that you have the critical computer systems and softwares working. For business recovery, you need to make sure that you have critical business processes that more than one person know. In case you lose people, you need to have other people that know what those processes are. You need to have a process that will dictate how you restore the business to the same levels as pre-disaster. And you must always have what we call the right contingency planning, a workaround process. So if I lose all my computers and I lose all my internet facilities, how can I process work? How can I process daily operations? Part of business continuity planning, there should be a focus. You should know how to make sure you can recover the data in the event that it's lost. You should have a recovery process for the business documented. You should be able to have a return to normal and how you're going to do it documented. And in the event that you can't return to normal or people can't come to work from the office, you have to have a make-do plan in place. How are they going to work without the right computer? How are they going to work without access to the right information or data? How are they going to work without a factory where they used to work? What are they going to do? Can we afford to keep 200 factory staff working when we don't need them and there's nothing happening at the factory? However, if we're looking at it from an IT perspective, it's different. Let's look at the event. Let's say, for example, Amazon could not take any more orders because its computer mainframe or servers failed because of an earthquake or a disaster. The other option is, what happened if there was a volcano and your laboratories or Amazon's warehouses became flooded? What happens if there was a fire in their building? What happens if all the robots at the Amazon warehouse stop functioning because of a virus in the software? All of these require business continuity planning. All right. What could the solutions be? What could the solutions be? Could the solutions mean buying new equipment or having new equipment on hand in a warehouse that you can use in the event that the old equipment got damaged? Are you able to continue business without machinery and equipment manually? Or is it better for you to let the business totally collapse, close your doors, fire all your staff, and then do it again from fresh once you go back to restart the business after the business has recovered, or once the recovery journey starts? All right, so remember, business continuity management means ensuring the continuity or uninterrupted provision of operations and services. BCM is an ongoing process with several different but complementary elements. Planning for business, planning for business continuity is a comprehensive process that includes disaster recovery, business resumption, and contingency planning. All of these in the table are part of contingency planning. What would you do if your warehouse got flooded? What would you do if all your computer systems and data crashed? What would happen if your computer hardware blew up, all the areas or the drives, the storage drives where you store your information blew up, and you lost all the data? What would happen? What would happen if you had not backed up your data to a cloud server? Would you still be able to do business? Think of hospitals. If the computer servers and systems that keep patient records in hospital die, and the hospital doesn't have a paper backup system, what are the dangers? Does that mean they'll be dispensing the wrong drug to patients and killing them? Does that mean they will not be able to continue treating patients? How will doctors communicate their patient's condition to their nurses? Will they go back to handwriting charts? Will they be able to have enough time to handwrite everything after not being used to handwriting charts and using computers for so many years? So all of these things are part of business continuity planning. They are part of business continuity, which is a beginning without end. It's something that we have to continuously plan for as the business grows, as the business expands, or even as the business retracts. You need to be ready and have a plan in place. All right. Part of business continuity is not only the ongoing part of the business, also it's up to businesses to make sure that they have the right security measures in place. Because for any business, if you let your security measures lapse or fall behind during a major event or a major disaster, whether it's a volcano, whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's a disease like COVID-19, if you allow your systems to compromise or be compromised, then at the end you have a bigger disaster. Imagine a hospital without a power generator. Imagine a company like Amazon without access to its computers and the orders that they get via the cloud. Imagine how could Amazon pack millions of orders around the clock if they had no computer system working. Does everybody understand that? Wave your hands, please, everyone. Come on, wave. All right, so what I'd like to do, if I can, we'll take a 2-minute break, 2 minutes. I'll be back in 2 minutes and we'll continue. Is that okay? Can everybody wave their hands? 2 minutes, all right? 2 minutes sharp. Thank you so much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Thank you for allowing me the break. Let's talk about the impact of COVID-19. Let's talk about putting business continuity management and business continuity planning into place during COVID-19, so far as school children were concerned. We've spoken about the impact on the corporate world. Let's talk about the impact that COVID-19 had on education systems around the world. What was the impact? The impact was children were no longer able to go to school every day. Children had to start studying online. Most parents did not have enough computers at home for their children to study online. Schools did not have online teaching capabilities. Here in Singapore, students by the thousands were told they had to go online and study online. Parents who hadn't planned for it had to arrange to take time off work to stay home with their children and sit next to them so the children could actually sit in front of a computer for 5 hours a day and attend classes. But that was not the only vulnerability on the education system. Teachers were not prepared to teach online. Teachers did not know how to teach online. There was no material developed for online teaching. No one expected that schools would have to close their doors for months on end. Does everybody understand how business was impacted, or how schools failed to even have business continuity plans? Because what is the business for the education system? It's to educate children. What is the business of hospitals? It's to treat sick people. Hospitals failed. Education systems failed. Students actually were affected. The ripple effect. Okay, because if students weren't able to study and weren't able to prepare adequately for exams, shortly after COVID-19 came to an end, students did exams, and a lot of them did not score the results they would have scored had they been going to school every day and got the tuition from a teacher in a classroom, because many students did not know how to study online at home alone. Many students did not have the facilities to study online. If you go to countries like, third world countries where poor families could not afford to buy computers, their kids went without education. And in some countries, this didn't last 1 month. It lasted 3, 6, 9 months. So business continuity management does not only apply to businesses or corporations, it also applies to hospitals, schools, and people's daily lives. Does everybody understand that? People's daily lives. Could you all wave your hands, please? Good, excellent. Gwyn Sao, would you like to say hello? Tell me what you understand about BCM so far. Go ahead, Gwyn. Hi, Gwyn. How are you today?
Hi.
How are you
Hi,
today,
sir.
gorgeous?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
Can you tell me, do you understand what I've been talking about so far?
Yep, sir.
Okay, tell me, what do you think the impact of business continuity management was on your country or one of the companies that you know in your country? How do you think the failure to have a business continuity plan affected them? Can you tell me?
For example, I used to work in education
Yes.
center, and I think that they plan an excellent
Yes.
solution, because I remember at that time is in 2020.
Yes.
Yeah, and then the COVID-19 is came out, and they bought a IT system from United States to teach
Yes.
a student online.
Yes.
And then, even though the COVID is happened, but they also prepare for online class. Yeah, and they own, of course, they profit to their company and reduce the loss.
All right, but can you imagine had they not implemented online, they would have lost money, right? They probably would
Yeah.
have gone out of business.
Yeah.
So, and the fact that they only implemented online education when they knew of COVID-19, the cost of implementing that system would have been higher than had
Yeah.
they done it beforehand. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Do you think that your school or the school you work for now or used to work for, do you think they are now better equipped for another COVID-19?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, good. Thank you so much, Gwyn. I really appreciate it. Let me talk about one more element, Gwyn. Business recovery plan is one. Did they have a disaster recovery plan in place? Did they decide on how smooth the transition was going to be coming back from online learning to classroom learning? Did they do that unexpectedly or did they have a plan?
No, I think that they have, I did have no plan for it.
It just happened overnight, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And how did you feel as an employee, as a teacher? Were you stressed because of the requirements? Did you have to develop new material to teach, or did that already come with the system?
I think all of the points you gave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Gwyn. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you again shortly. Thank you so much. All right.
you.
So as I said, there you go. Education, we had it from a teacher or from somebody who used to work in a system. Does anybody else here want to share their experiences about BCM? Does anybody want to ask me a question? Please show me your hand and let us talk. Anyone? Rebecca Arif. Hello, Rebecca. Good evening, ma'am. You want to unmute your microphone for me? Hi, Rebecca. Where are you from?
I am Pakistan.
Great. Rebecca, tell me, what do you understand by what I've said about business continuity management, and how do you think that the failure to have BCM affected a company or an organization in your country? Can you give me an example? Are you there, Rebecca?
Sir,
I can't hear.
A student
Yes.
and I am a teacher. And can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, I can hear you
Hello.
now. You need to speak up. Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, your voice is not clear.
Can you hear me now? Go ahead. Okay, Rebecca, can you hear me or not?
Yeah.
All right. So tell me, how do you think COVID-19 and the lack of plans affected an organization or where you work in your country? What do you think the impact of not having a business continuity plan had on your organization or your company? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can you hear, but sir, your voice is not clear.
Okay, I think there's a problem with the internet, Rebecca. I'll come back to you. I will come back to you. Can everybody else hear me? Can you wave your hands if you can hear me? Can everybody else hear me? Okay, Rebecca, I'll come back to you. I think you have an internet problem. I will come back to you. Can you hear me now, Rebecca? Rebecca, can you hear me now? Yes or no? Wave your hand, Rebecca. My co-host, could you send a message with Rebecca? Just tell her to check her volume settings. I think she's having a local internet problem. Could you do that, please, Mr. Amala? Thank you. Okay, all right. I'll come back to you, Rebecca. All right, does everybody understand so far? Does anybody else want to talk to me? Okay, I'm getting hands up here everywhere. Just bear with me. Anybody else have a question? All right, fine, excellent. Yeah, okay. Baptist Yaoni. Hello, Baptist, how are you today? Can you unmute your microphone?
Yes, I'm.
Good evening, Baptist. Are you there, Baptist? Unmute your microphone, mate. Can you unmute your microphone? Baptist, I can't hear you. You have to unmute your microphone. Go ahead.
Yes, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Yes, the BCM or the business management plan affect people in different way. Like now, for me, I'm from South Sudan here. It affects very many company here. Like we have one of the company, which is a cooperative company, which was harvesting teak. But during the COVID-19, it affected them because they were unable to employ a good number of employees to work with them. They lay off their workers. It became difficult because they deal in hardwood business.
Right.
But now without workers, it affected their business because there were no people to work in the sawmill or in the farm. So this is how it affects business.
Absolutely.
And also school, some of the school have no plan. Even like during COVID-19, most of the school closed because they have no business plan. Like here, we have shortage of internet. It becomes difficult for learner to go to school and learn, and most of the school collapse. Even teacher change their profession, leave teaching profession and go to work for private.
Yes, I understand. No, I totally understand. Thank you for sharing that. And a lot of companies made that problem or faced that problem because companies had not planned what would happen if they terminated all their workers. What was the disaster recovery plan? If you're a timber manufacturer, as Baptiste just told us, and you had people that worked in your sawmills and knew how to operate your equipment, and due to COVID-19, you closed the sawmill and terminated them, but you did not have a plan on what you're going to do to make sure they come back after you opened, then of course your business will actually have failed because they had no disaster recovery plan in place. So should they have terminated them or should they have given them unpaid leave? Because now they've lost those people. So to open the sawmill now, they have to find other people. They have to teach them how to work in the sawmill. But until then, this company continues to suffer and they would suffer financial losses. Thank you, Baptiste. All right, let's go back to our PowerPoint presentation. So now that we've looked at all the consequences of COVID-19 on the world and what the impact is of not having business continuity management, let's look at business continuity management from a security perspective. Remember, risk management is an ongoing issue for all companies, especially a company like Amazon or Airlines. Can you imagine what would happen if Airlines actually lost all their data? What would happen if the firewalls and security on its computer databases were actually breached? Think about it. Risk management. What are you going to do as part of BCM to ensure that your computer systems are safe? Do you have enough security? Do you have enough insurance on the equipment and the information that's in there? And have you done a business impact analysis to find out what the possible vulnerabilities are, how to ensure they don't happen, and what do you need to put in place now? Okay, then you need to actually have an emergency operations plan. So if you lost all your data, do you have a plan on whether you're going to recover it and whether you have a backup in place? Do you have more than one backup? What happens if you back up the information in your own country and then all the data in your own country is wiped out? Do you have another backup somewhere in another country to protect yourself? Let's talk banks. You know, banks all over the world, they usually back up their computer systems in 3 different parts of the world, and that's part of standard procedure. So for example, if your bank is in India, it may back up its information in India. It may back it up in the cloud, in cyberspace, with a company that's owned by the Americans, or they may put it somewhere else in a data center in the UK, or they may have 2 data centers, one in the UK and one in the other end of Asia. So what they're doing is making sure that if the data center in one part of the world collapses or is out of action due to a volcano or whatever the reason is, they can still recover their data somewhere else. All of this is part of business continuity management and disaster recovery. They need to understand that if all the systems in the office cannot be used because all their staff have to work from home, do they have a computer network that will allow their employees to access the data in their mainframe or in their database in the company? If not, how long will it take them to implement that? Should it be something they have beforehand? Yes. Okay. And then they need to have a plan in place on how they're going to implement the recovery plan for all the IT elements of the business. So if the business was to shut down, like a factory, for example, in China that operates on robotics, when they bring the factory back, what is the recovery plan? Can they just switch on these robots and go back to work normally? Or will they need to reprogram them to work at a different pace or to work with different raw materials? All of these are questions that have to be asked as part of business continuity planning and as part of the security aspect, which needs to form part of your business continuity plan. Remember, security management or risk management is a critical element, because no matter how much business continuity planning you have, if you don't have the right risk management elements in place, you will cause a negative impact to your business and put your business at risk. All right. If you can't describe what you're doing as a process and how you're going to actually put in place systems to protect or maintain, sustain, and run the business during a disaster, then you don't really understand what is business continuity management. Remember, business continuity management is planning, pre-planning, which means having a project initiation and management committee, doing risk evaluation and placing controls on paper, making sure that you do business impact analysis on an ongoing process, probably once every 6 months. You need to have planning in place where you continually upgrade your business strategies in the event of a disaster happening. And if it does happen, how would business continue? You need to have emergency response plan outlining how your operations would continue. And you need to have a plan on how you'd implement such operations if they had to happen off-site in a different country or under different circumstances. And you would also have to go into post-planning. So that means after the planning is placed and you've done all the planning, you would then have to train all your staff on what their role is as part of the business continuity plan should an emergency happen, should a disaster happen, should COVID-19 come back. You need to make sure that you practice and exercise the plan in place to make sure that it works. And you make sure that you constantly check the plan and upgrade it based on the requirements, both from your customers and your market and your suppliers. All right, let's talk about a typical business continuity process. Everybody take a picture of this. The first thing is for the company's management to decide that they want to implement business continuity process. And that's where the organization, management, and all the departments sit down and talk. They together develop a business continuity policy and scope. They conduct what we call a business impact analysis. as part of them developing a business continuity process, policy, and scope, during that, they would identify all the risks and how to mitigate the risks. Once they've identified how to mitigate the risks and identified what the risks are, they will go on and continue with their business impact analysis. And they will then document a full recovery strategy. Once they have documented the recovery strategy, the next thing they would have to do is to test the plan. Put it on paper, make sure that all the people in the organization and the resources understand how the plan works, and test it. They have to constantly review their business continuity plan. They must constantly test that everything works properly based on what's planned, and all the relevant people in different departments verify that it is working. Okay, remember, management awareness and training of the people that work for them is a must, because if you don't do management awareness and training, you will not know what changes you may need to make due to a change in your environment, in your supply chain, or in your processes, or in your equipment, or in your ability to run that equipment. So ongoing review, testing, and verification are a must. Let's talk about a business impact analysis. What is a BIA? A BIA is a process where you, the company or your organization, looks at itself and identifies what are its core processes in manufacturing the product or delivering the service. What are the essential computer or IT applications and the time in which these should be recovered to minimize the impact to business continuity objectives and be able to operate with minimum operating requirements and still give access to these IT applications to all departments. For example, if you have a factory with robots, not only do they need access to IT and all the information that goes with the robots functioning, but also the other departments like your finance department, your sales department, your procurement department, they need to be able to access this information as well. So it's very important that part of your business impact analysis is that you look at the whole of the business, all its processes, whether they're IT automated or whether they are still manual. All of these things have to be looked at. Remember, the reason we do a business impact analysis is really just to better identify and understand the important processes or steps and what we need in order to actually implement a recovery and avoid a total shutdown of our business within an acceptable time frame and with an acceptable level of resources. If resources are available, and how do you minimize the need for resources? Because look at COVID-19. Many people could not work. They had to work from home. Many companies were not ready for that. Now let's look at the risk assessment part. Risk assessment should be conducted by the organization or the company annually, at least once a year, and you should review it every 6 months to update it. But every year you should do the whole assessment process again to make sure that your impact analysis is still accurate, and to make sure that nothing out there has changed and would impact your ability to actually implement the recovery plan or the business continuity plan that you are putting in place. You need to make sure that you test it, you revisit it regularly to make sure or to examine or identify any failures that may happen during the process due to a lack of resource or a lack of supply chain. You need to make sure that you understand all the risks that could affect the system, the people and business processes, and how to initiate an appropriate mitigation plan. So if, for example, you are setting a plan in place on how to deal with all the information you've backed up on clouds all over the world, what were to happen if all your backup information was to be lost because the 3 countries you've stored it in were at war? So you need to ask yourself, what would happen? Does that mean I also have to keep the information on a hard drive and make sure it's in a fire-proof room, protected and locked? Do I need that in order to counter if my online storage space or my online cloud storage of all the information and process I had failed? All of these things are part of the risks that you face, which will bring on failure. You need to make sure you identify those as part of your BCM risk assessment on an ongoing basis annually. Remember, critical success factors in BCM are: build smaller teams of matter experts. So that means in each department in your organization, have a small team that's part of your business continuity management project team. Make sure you work with the team and you're ready to cooperate and listen to what they had to say, and be prepared to have to invest in outside sources or software or other issues that they may need or services they may need to be able to implement the business continuity management plan when required. You must always be brutally honest in the way you plan. Do not always or ever say to yourself, it will be okay, because when disaster strikes, nothing is ever okay. Make sure you plan and you're brutally honest about the plans you need to have in place. Always do it in-house. If you have time and expertise, do it internally within your company, or ask a business continuity professional or consultant like myself to help you. All right, simplify large, complex, and critical functions. Keep them down to very basics. Your people, your facilities, your technology, and the way you drive your business and everything else that happens within your business in order for you to retain your customers, generate sales, make profits, and continue business. All right, so now that we've looked at that, before I go back and talk about some of the other elements that we covered, I want to make sure that everybody here understands what I mean by people, facilities, technology, and miscellaneous. Let's talk about that. Does everybody here understand the importance of people in your business continuity management plan? You cannot continue business if you come to an earthquake or a disaster of any kind and you've already let go of all your people. Then you have nothing, no human capital, and you will fail. All right. Does everybody understand what we mean when we talk about human capital in any project, even during business continuity management? Does everybody understand what I mean when we talk about the people factor? What do I mean by the facilities factor? Facilities mean the facilities they need in order to be able to implement the business continuity management processes that you've put in place. They could be laptops so everybody could work from home. It could be providing a VPN network for secure access to your company's data and files while people work at home. It could be providing technology that will enable them to access software and do the job quicker at home. And you will also have to allow for miscellaneous issues, such as how many of my people have the facilities to work from home? How many of them don't have a desk, don't have an office chair, no phone line in the room where they're going to work? Do we as a company need to provide them or subsidize the desk, the chair, and the computer? All of these issues are complex issues that you must be able to deal with. Don't think that if COVID-19 strikes again, you'll worry about it again in the future. You need to plan now. If you have 200 people working for you and you're a manufacturing plant, your procurement department should be able to work off-site with access to your servers or from their laptops. Your management or your finance accounting department, HR department can still work wherever they are through their laptops. But ask yourself, how are the people on the factory floor supposed to work? Do they need to be here, or can they control the artificial intelligence or robots or robotic arms sitting at their laptop at home? Do I need them, or can the robots do it all? If you don't have robots and your packing facilities coming to a standstill, what plans do you have in place to make sure that you can still pay the resources, the human capital, their salaries, so they will not starve or go into desperation because they're not getting their salary because they're not working during COVID-19. So you must have plans in place. Even though my staff can't work because they need to come to the office because our network is secured and we have no VPN, you must make sure that everything is in place. You must make sure you have the facilities. You must make sure that your people remain motivated. You must make sure that they have the equipment and the technology. And you must also make sure that they're well prepared to deal with miscellaneous issues that may come up during the disaster. Does everybody here follow what I've said so far? Can you wave your hands if you follow? Wave your hands. Good. Does anybody here want to do and ask me some questions, please? Because BCM is a very complicated subject. And when I teach it during our diploma or postgraduate diploma, we spend 2 lessons, 6 hours, because we go into examples of plans, checklists, etc. So tonight was only supposed to give you an overview of what business continuity planning is, or business continuity analysis, as I said. Okay, so remember, guys, if you don't already practice BCA, you need to make sure that you already start thinking of doing a business impact analysis on your organization. Because if you don't do it now, the next time the disaster or COVID-19 strikes, you may be out of business, and that is a fact. Does everybody understand what I mean when I say out of business? Wave your hands. Out of business means no job, no business. Everything stops. Okay, that can be a direct result of business continuity management or lack thereof, because you have done nothing. You have done nothing to look at what I just said. You have done no business impact analysis. You don't know what your business needs. So failure to go through business continuity planning as part of the BC business continuity management, failure to think of disaster recovery, failure to draw a disaster implementation plan or disaster recovery implementation plan, okay, a disaster impact analysis. And then as a result of the DIA, you need to then ensure that you have a plan on how you're going to implement it. Now, remember, you do a business impact analysis. And then once you've got that, you also need to ask yourself, What about the impacts of a disaster as a result of not having the right business continuity management plan in place? But remember, if you do a BIA properly and you ask yourself all the questions required in a business impact analysis, then you will be able to make sure that you have everything it takes. Remember, you need to look at everything: critical business processes, core functions, IT applications, everything that impacts the operation of the business, all the functions. All right, does everybody understand now what we mean by the importance of BCM? Talk to me, guys, don't be shy. Does everybody understand what the core functions and necessity and requirements of BCM are? Okay, let me go back and ask some of the people here that I spoke to earlier. Okay, who have we got? Davey Bajayo. Hello, Davey. Do you understand what I mean by BCM? Could you unmute your microphone, Davey? Hi, Davey. How are you tonight?
Sir, good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Yes, I'm here from Cambodia, but I am Philippine.
Good, excellent. How is the weather tonight?
Yeah, I'm good. And then morning is so hot.
Okay, well, I wish I was there. Singapore's weather today is a bit on the cold side. I'm sorry, we have microphone problems. One moment, please.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. So, as I was saying, I'm sorry. I think Zoom has got problems tonight. But what I was trying to say is Singapore is a bit overcast today. It was a bit cool, but it's very nice to see you and hear about the weather that you're enjoying over there. Tell me, Davey, do you understand what I've explained about business continuity management?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Tell me.
Because I have, because of my experience also. Yes, because I'm working also as a quality assurance representative in Sweden, but
Right.
A little different of the, how to say, the planning. So the planning of the, yeah.
So you were involved in planning for business continuity during COVID, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And did you enjoy it? Did you learn anything from it?
Yeah. I'm very interesting to hear from you because I learned a lot of things because we are different, different. How to say, different planning.
Well, let me tell you all, if you want checklists or if you want drafts of BCP templates, which you can use for doing your own disaster recovery plan, or you want to come up with your own analysis of what you need to implement BCM, you simply need to drop me an email at my email address and just say that you attended BizTalk 47, and I would be happy to send you a PDF document. I would be happy to do that, Danilo. My dear Mr. Amala, could you give my email address to everyone? For those of you who attended my session 2 weeks ago on HRM, I have been drowned under with requests. I promise I will send you all whatever you've asked for by Sunday. I have about 50 requests for documents and templates for JDs, etc. They will all go out by Sunday. But if you have a request about anything for business continuity management, please let me know and I'll try to get it out to you by Sunday also. Remember, business continuity management is the core of any business. Ladies and gentlemen, COVID-19 has nearly destroyed the world. Companies like Amazon, true, they actually survived because their number of online orders increased by a volume of more than 1 million a month. Sorry, 1 million a week, actually, not a month. So their volumes increased not by hundreds, not by thousands, but by millions. Amazon has become the world's largest e-commerce platform thanks to COVID-19. They now have warehouses and distribution centers in almost every part of the world. Why? Because COVID-19 forced them to do this in order to be able to cope with the volume. You might say, but I prefer to buy from Alibaba. Well, Alibaba may be cheaper, but can Alibaba deliver the same day as Amazon? I don't think so. How many of you here order from Amazon? Anybody here uses Amazon? Amazon? Okay. Well, one thing that you know about Amazon, Danilo, is during COVID-19, you could order from Amazon, and provided they had the stock in the warehouse, you got it delivered the same day. Am I right?
Exactly, sir.
All right.
Exactly.
Danilo, can you tell me, do you think that Amazon would have been able to do that had they not implemented the right BCM? Do you think they would have been able to do that?
Well, basically, no. Actually, it's based upon how they review how the things happens. During the time when we were in COVID-19. Okay, they made a lot of how do you call this one, changes in terms of
Absolutely.
yeah, in terms of supply chain.
And they
Okay,
had to do it very quickly, Danilo. They had to
exactly,
implement
exactly,
technology. They had to
exactly,
spend millions of dollars on robotics
exactly.
to make
Yes,
sure they could keep up. And
yes.
even though they say that they spent a lot of money, lucky for them, they were able to get most of that back because the
Mhm.
increase in the volume. So I
Yes,
guess what I'm
exactly.
trying to say, if you do the right risk analysis,
Mhm.
sometimes it's worth investment because the return could be greater than the investment. Can I
Yes,
ask you, Danilo, do you
yeah.
think that Amazon incurred more expenses, or you think they got their money back with the sales they generated?
Well, basically, they had back all those investments that
So
they put.
if I asked you, Danilo, would you be happy if you owned Amazon right now?
Oh, exactly. Yes,
Okay,
definitely.
well, let me tell you, Mr.
I
Joe
might have the
Bezos is a
billions of
multi-billionaire. And
yeah,
you know what,
billions of
Danilo,
dollars.
the funny thing about Joe Bezos, when he actually had the vision of starting Amazon,
Mhm.
his statement was that he wanted to have the largest and most profitable e-commerce platform in the world. And it
Yes.
just happens that
Mhm.
COVID-19 struck within
Yeah.
years and
Yeah.
his dream came through. So now everybody's waiting to see what is the next mission that he's going to set, or what is the next objective he will set for Amazon. Will he keep growing it, or will he change the shape of Amazon? But the
But,
funny thing is, Danilo, even though
mhm,
COVID is over, people are
mhm.
still buying from Amazon. Do you know that?
Yes. 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 Exactly, sir.
Okay, Danilo, can you tell me what do you think you've learnt from BCM tonight? What things are what points will you take away?
Well, actually, you have to have a contingency plan, okay?
Yes,
Because yeah, it happens now, okay? It might happen in the future, okay? Or
right.
it might be getting something like worse, okay? So for us, in order for us to be prepared, okay, we have to get ready for all those things, okay, that will happen in the future, okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank
just
you
like
very
what
much,
what
Danilo.
others predict, just like
Good,
what others
excellent,
predict.
excellent.
Mm,
Danilo,
mm.
can I ask what business are you in? What industry are you in?
I'm from in logistic
All right.
industry, sir.
Can you tell me, do you think that business continuity is important in your industry?
Totally important, sir.
All right. And
Totally
can I
important.
ask, do you think that your company would have survived COVID better if they had the right business continuity in place?
Exactly, sir. Yes,
All right.
definitely.
Well, listen, mate,
Definitely,
if
yes.
you need any templates or anything that I can send you to help you make that happen, please let me know. I'd be happy to
Yes, I'm
help you.
about to
All
do
right.
that now. I'm
Thank
sending
you
you
very
one.
much. Okay. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, that goes for you, Madam Nazgul, as well. If you'd like any templates to implement BCA in your business, or if any of you would like to implement BCM, I'm sorry, business continuity management, or disaster recovery management in your business, then let me know. I would love to share templates with you to help you do that. And let me just share one more slide with you before we go. I want to go back to the slide that we just spoke about at the beginning. Just one moment, please. Okay, remember, disaster recovery plans, business continuity plans, vulnerabilities. You must identify those. Okay, remember, business continuity is number one, disaster recovery is number two, the ability to plan out how you're going to continue operations COOP, COOP as we call it. Also EOP, Emergency Operations, which is part of disaster recovery, crisis management, and incident response. So if you were next to a volcano and for the love of God, hopefully it never happens, your factory was destroyed by a volcano, what are your actual crisis management? What will happen to all the orders you've got? Do you have other facilities where you can manufacture? Or what would you do? Would you send the orders to someone else to do it for you? Or would you simply fold the business? If you operated a hospital and you during your COVID-19, you run out of beds. What are you going to do? How are you going to handle that? If you turn away patients and let patients die, that will forever impact your reputation. And if your reputation's impacted, will you still have any customers post COVID-19? I won't. I won't go back there. Can I imagine you went to a hospital, you were sick during COVID-19, and they told you they could not treat you because they were full, and you had to suffer and go to another hospital? Would you have the confidence to go back to that same hospital again? No, absolutely not. Look at it, ladies and gentlemen. BCM is critical, because if you don't handle these situations correctly and you, in actual fact, do a disservice to your customers or your clients, customers, clients, as far as goods, the supply chain you supply, or your suppliers that you buy raw material from. If you are unable to take them into accountability, and if you're unable to include them all in your business continuity plan, the fact is that you could end up losing market as a result. If you cut off one supplier and do not do anything to help him during your business continuity plan, to give him some sort of belief that you do your best to keep taking his raw materials, the chances are he could cut you off. And after the disaster, you could be without raw materials. It's the same. If you go to a store and they refuse to sell you a product because it's sold out, and they sell it at the higher price to someone else, they risk losing you as a customer once things get back to normal. Do you all understand that? Yes or no? Yeah? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I do want to thank you for joining me tonight. I hope that you've all learned something from tonight's session. I will be coming back next week, and next week we'll be going back on a subject that all of you have asked me to look at, and that is basically going to be to do with what we discussed last time. It's going to be on how to roll out strategies in different areas of HR. So we're going to look at compensation and benefits in one session. We're then going to go into what we call succession planning, and I'm going to give you all the tools in a separate session. So for the next 2 or 3 weeks, you'll probably see me twice a week, and we'll focus on those areas. But once again, ladies and gentlemen, I hope tonight's very brief insight into business continuity management has given you all something to think about. We only have 2 hours, and I hope I've helped you tonight. Would anybody else like to ask me any questions before I go? Anyone? Okay, I have a question. One moment, please. I have 2 questions. Just give me a moment, please. The first question comes from Nazgul. Yes, madam. How can I help you again? Yes, Nazgul.
Oh, sir.
Yes.
I have a question. We all of us knows that business begins from contracts, and every contract, every business really have a business
Nazgul, I'm not
continuity
hearing you. Just bear with me for a moment. Let me see if I can get better reception. Just hold. Okay, Nazgul, can you try now?
Okay.
Yeah,
Is
go
it good
ahead.
now?
Yeah, go
Yes,
ahead.
sir. So every business has a business continuity management plan, okay? And why, when COVID-19 began, why we couldn't use our plans? And
Because the business continuity management plans you had prior to COVID-19 were not complete. They were incomplete. They never dealt with all the elements required for such a disaster, because when they sat down and thought of what BCM was, they weren't thinking of COVID. They were thinking of a simple issue like disconnection of electricity or I lose a supplier. But no business in the world had proper BCM plans in place. In actual fact, COVID-19 has now woken up businesses all over the world. Any BCM they had before is now going into the shredder. A new BCM will be 25 times more detailed. Look at airlines, Nazgul. Look at airlines. Do you think airlines ever had a plan to have a fleet of 170 Boeings grounded? Nazgul, you've heard of Emirates Airlines? You've heard of Emirates, right? Nazgul, Emirates have 161 A380 Airbuses grounded for the duration of COVID-19. Every A380 costs them over $500 million approximately. That's the cost of buying it, maintaining it, and keeping it on the ground, okay? If it doesn't fly, they don't get any of that money back. They had something like 50 million times 160 aircraft. You're talking hundreds of billions, okay? But the point is, all these aircraft were grounded. Do you think that any time in Emirates business continuity planning, do you think that anybody could have imagined that their whole fleet would be grounded? Emirates have more than 300 aircraft, 160 A380s, Boeing 777s, Boeing 757s, and Dreamliners. Their whole fleet was almost grounded. No airline had planned for that, Nazgul. No airline. Nazgul, airlines were sending their aircraft to be parked in the deserts of France and Western Australia because they had no room to park them at airports in their own countries. The only people that profited was the parking ground, the storage area in Perth. Now, you take an aircraft and park it there for 6 months and lock it down. Now, you cannot just send a captain there and tell him to fly it back. You have to send a complete engineering crew to work under the hot desert sun for 4 days and go through every single part of that aircraft. They have to test it. Then they have to bring in equipment to re-energize the system, making sure it's correct. Then they have to fuel it and then fly it out. So can you imagine the cost and the resources that put on airlines? Emirates had to fly a whole engineering workshop from Dubai to the desert of Perth. They set up their own tent and their own workshop for 3 months before they could start reactivating their aircraft. So my answer to you, Nazgul, is no one ever planned for a disaster like COVID-19. If you ask me today, Nazgul, if you asked me in 2019, do you ever see a COVID coming? I thought we have the best medical technology in the world. I would have thought that scientists could have stopped it. And you know, Nazgul, no one knows where COVID came from. I'm sure you know, Nazgul, that there's rumors that it came from China. China say there's rumors it started in a military scientific research plant in the US. Other scientists say that no one's responsible, it just happened. Look at the bird flu, look at the chicken pox, look at the measles, look at bird flu. We have come to live with chicken pox. We have come to live with measles. They become part of an epidemic, not a pandemic, right? So who's, I mean, I don't know. If you ask me today, Nazgul, can I say to any businessman, you don't need to plan BCP at its maximum? I would say you're crazy. If your business generates $100 million a year, you need to at least put a good 750,000 into bringing in proper business continuity management consultants to making sure you solidify the full process, because you need to protect your $100 million turnover, all right? And, you know, if a company does its own BCM on its own and its own business continuity plan on its own, sometimes they look at it with a closed mind. So sometimes it's always good to have a third party give you advice on that plan. And unfortunately, Nazgul, 99% of companies around the world had failed to imagine how bad the disaster is going to be. Do you know, Nazgul, that nearly 3,000 F&B businesses in the Asia Pacific, these are multinational restaurants and food beverage companies, have closed doors in the last 12 months. It's not because their food is no good, Nazgul. It's because they had no plan on what they were going to do if there was no customers to buy their food. They had no plan on what they were going to do if they couldn't import their ingredients. For those who did take on delivery and they could source common ingredients, they stayed. But for five-star restaurants, for Michelin star restaurants who used to import their meat from the US and foie gras from France, they had no customers. Restaurants were paying hundreds of thousands of dollars rent to the big hotels. Within 3 months, they folded, they closed their doors. 3,000 F&B brands have gone out of business. I'm going to ask you, Nazgul, in your country, how many department stores lost money?
I think, yeah, everybody, every company, I think.
And the reason they lost, Nazgul, is not because they had to lose, it's because they never planned to go from a brick and mortar business to an online business. And by the time that your department store built its own website and started selling material, Amazon was already 10 steps ahead of them. Bezos had this picture that he would have stock from every supplier in the world in his warehouse, and he had it right, because he said to himself, if I buy 100,000 washing machines and keep them in my warehouse, one day I'm going to sell them. But if the rest of the world run out of stock, I'll have stock. And he said to himself, if I don't make money on these pieces of equipment and have to reduce them, but I've already made money through other items. How did I make money? Because my ability to supply consumers, even though that no one else had stock, I have won consumer confidence. As a result of winning that consumer confidence, the average consumer dollars spent with me are going to increase. The number of consumers will increase. My total revenue will increase. My average spend per purchase will increase. And that will cover my losses if some of the machines I buy don't sell. But he went one step further. He said to all his suppliers, you know, we're going into COVID-19. There is going to become a lockdown. How about you give me your stock, put it in my warehouse. If I sell it, I'll pay you for it. It's on consignment. But if I leave it in your warehouse and I get orders and I can't ship, you don't get paid. And eventually you have no sales, you go out of business, and your stock in your warehouse becomes worthless because you're out of business. So part of Bezos, the business continuity plan that Bezos put into effect, was not only on how he's going to sell his products, but it was also on what he was going to do for all his inline, all his suppliers, because without suppliers, Bezos doesn't have a business. Would you agree with me, Danilo? You agree with me, Nazgul? They don't have a business. Without the airlines, without pilots can't fly. Airlines without cabin crew can't fly. But you see, airlines have the same problem, because during COVID-19, airlines like Singapore Airlines, Emirates fired 50% of its flying human capital. So they fired flight attendants, they fired captains, they fired pilots, they fired ground engineers, because they thought that the airline industry was ruined. But let's look at what's happened now. Now that airlines or the skies are open again, what's happened to airlines? They're now losing revenue because they don't have enough captains to fly aircraft. They don't have enough flight attendants to resume normal schedules. So even though they've started flying again, Nazgul, they're not flying the volume they used to fly before. I'll give you an example. I tried to make a booking recently for one of my family to travel from Australia to here, my 77-year-old mother, in first class or business class, because as a respect to her, when she says, son, I want to fly, I say, Mum, how? She says, first. And she calls Singapore Airlines. She says, I would like to redeem a first class ticket. And they say, sorry, Mrs. Rowder, right now we're not offering first class redemptions because we have a lot of people wanting to pay for first class. I can only offer you business or economy class, ma'am. And my mother rings me and says, you want me, 76-year-old woman, to fly 9 hours in economy class, son? So what does that do to me as a consumer, Nazgul? I then have to ring other airlines where I don't have points and I have to pay for the seat, right? But let me tell you, what does that do to my confidence in Singapore Airlines? Do you think I'm going to go back to them and still give them my business? I've lost my confidence in them. I have 8 million miles. Or that's what I had before, not now. I had 8 million miles, all right? And it's not only Singapore Airlines, it's other airlines, right? But if I can't use those points hypothetically, what happens to me as a consumer? Do I still have their do they still have my loyalty? Do I still have their trust? No. So as a part of them not planning effectively, not only do they lose revenue, but they lose future and potential revenue. And that's where Bezos was smarter. Singapore Airlines is suffering. Singapore Airlines now doesn't have enough pilots and captains. So if they were running 6 flights a week to Australia, now they're running 4. If they were running 12 flights a week to London, they're now running 7 because they don't have enough cockpit crew to fly their aircraft. And everybody's saying, hold on, but there's a lot of captains out there. Why don't they hire them? Because these captains are so angry, they fired them and they're already working in another part of the world. They don't want to come back. So do you understand what I mean, Nazgul? No one in the world. It's not that companies didn't plan. It's not that companies didn't practice BCM, but BCM never played such a major role in business because no one had ever experienced it. If we look at World War I or World War II, well, they came unexpectedly, and I guess businesses back then planned as much as they could. But you know, it was a war. It was a kamikaze war. So today, I think the world has learned a very serious lesson. And let me tell you, as an academic and having a lot of friends who are full-time in BCM, they are very busy consultants right now. They have clients lining up for business consultancy management or business continuity management consultancy. So, you know, the world is being transformed, Nazgul, and no matter what business you're in, whether you're a small business or a large business, you really need to sit down and ask yourself, what did COVID-19 suffer? What did COVID-19 bring? And you don't want to only plan for COVID-19. That whatever you plan now has to be something which is going to fight something 10 times the size of COVID-19. Because if COVID-19 closed down the world for a year or 2 years, then trust me, whoever brought on COVID-19, the next time they do it, it's going to happen on a much bigger scale. As the world keeps growing, as people keep living, as the air and the environment keeps getting damaged, it's probably we're going to have a disease much worse than COVID-19. So, you know, who knows? The next one could ground aircrafts forever. I don't know. You know, I spoke to the CEO of an airline 9 months ago in another country because I did consultancy for them. And I said to him, when do you think you'll fly again? He said 2025. He never expected to fly again in 2022. And now 70% of his aircraft is in the air. The other 30% is on the ground because they made an incorrect decision and fired half of their crew. They did not plan. Instead of saying to the crew, take unpaid leave, we'll pay you 70% of your salary, we want you back. They just fired them. They retrenched them. What happened to them? They've all found jobs elsewhere. Okay. And Emirates is very smart because as soon as COVID finished, what they said, if you've got any experience as in-flight service crew, apply to Emirates. We've got jobs now. And that was like 2 months before all the other airlines started recruiting again. So, you know, business continuity management is something that you cannot plan. You can never estimate what you need. And no matter how many consultants you bring forward, Nazgul, it's not only BCM, it's not only the plan, but before they go to that, they have to start examining What are the dangers that the world is facing right now? What are the geographical problems? What are the environmental issues? What are the economical issues that the world is facing? Are we heading towards another depression? Is the world going to go into inflation mode again? Is inflation going to go through the roof as it did years ago? All of these are elements for business continuity management. Does that answer your question, Nazgul? I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Have I answered your question, ma'am?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Did I answer your question, or did I give you a headache?
Sorry?
Did I give you a headache, or did I answer your question?
Your answer. Your
Thank
answer
you,
for
ma'am.
my question.
Thank you. It's
so
my
much.
pleasure, Nazgul. It's my pleasure.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I can provide you resources or templates, or if you want me to give you ideas on BCM in your industry, please drop me an email, but please don't expect an answer within a few days. Give me 10, 14 days. I answered about 90 emails yesterday on the last session I did in HR. I promise you, you'll get it within 14 days at the most. If it's a simple question, you'll usually get it by Sunday or Monday. But if it's a more complicated question, it might take me some time. It's because I look after some 30,000 students and I'm a head of department. So please forgive me for that. And I appreciate all of you attending. Ladies and gentlemen, from me, Wally Rauda, my background is I've been in a professional academic now for well over 35, 36, what are we, 2020, 38 years. I've served as head of faculty in human resources, strategic management, business continuity management, and business operations. I've served in business operations for about 5 years, but my specialization is basically HR, strategic management, and business continuity management. I did some strategic planning and strategic marketing work, but that is what I've done all my life. And, you know, business continuity management and human resource management or manpower planning sometimes go hand in hand. So if I can help you, if you need any advice, please drop me an email. But from me here tonight, thank you very much for joining me. Don't forget to visit us on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and we are the Apex Stories on YouTube. Please go back tomorrow to Apex Stories on YouTube. You'll be able to watch this presentation anytime after lunch tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, from me here in Singapore, and on behalf of my co-host tonight, Mr. Amala, who just got married recently. So if you all want to wave to him and say congratulations, he'd really appreciate that. There you go, Mr. Amala. Our students love you, Amala. Congratulations, Amala. Okay. Okay, all right. So from me, everybody, thank you very much. And from my co-host as well, good night. I'll see you at BizTalk on Saturday. It'll be BizTalk 48. Thank you, everybody. God bless you. Good night, everyone. Good night.